Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe even some new people as well here. We now are officially, we have a bit of an IndyCar partnership. So welcome to Speed Street. My name is Connor Daly, for those that are not familiar. My co-host, Chase Holden, is here as well. Welcome to our show. We have the first post-race report show. Very excited to get into everything that happened at the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. We are lucky enough to have the winner of said event on our show today, Joseph Newgarden, a hero to so many, as I mentioned in his introduction. I think you guys will love the interview. Joseph is always very honest, and I respect that out of him. He's a person that I've known since I was a preteen. So that's, that helps a little bit there. And just a great weekend for him. So a lot to talk about. And I realized that, with our new IndyCar partnership, there was a lot of chatter online. Like, hey, is this show going to be any, what's happening? Is the show going to be any different? Well, no, this is still the Speed Street show. So we're going to be honest about everything that goes on in IndyCar. We're going to be honest about how we feel about it. And Chase, I'd like to know how you feel today following the first IndyCar race of the season.
Well, let me tell you this much, Connor. Watching it this past weekend, I do realize that my smart television does not like Peacock. I did watch the race on Peacock on my cell phone. I was dedicated. I was committed. I sat there, full screen, dived in. Now, I wish I'd have had a bigger screen, but I did what I did, and I'm definitely trying to make sure that I put my focus on the streaming industry. I want to support the streams.
Absolutely.
So I
and Peacock,
I enjoyed
great
the
coverage. I enjoy Peacock a lot. I watched all the qualifying, practice sessions, everything on Peacock.
Yeah, no, I did too, and I saw a lot of great clips that came out afterwards on IndyCar NBC as well. They had I'm learning all the names of the broadcasters right now, which I should know. But I had this one clip where one of the pit reporters or paddock reporters, however you would call it here in IndyCar,
nailed it.
He had weights.
Weights, yeah.
He was trying.
That was a great segment.
Show you, because you guys don't have power steering, and I think that is a really cool thing to show off and talk about. So. It's, in IndyCar, that was a fun thing to watch. Also, it was my birthday weekend, so I was juggling a lot of, birthday, family activities. But then people would be like, celebrate. Hey, do you want some cake? And I'm like, watching the race.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it went. So it was my party, and I did what I wanted to. But overall, Joseph Newgarden just, dominating the scene, basically, coming out. Just kind of like we talked about on last week's show. Can't wait to talk to him here about, just that laser focus. It's already showing. It's already showing now, and a lot of other surprises along the way too. And I know that you'll be able to dive in a little bit deeper to that. And I can't wait to kind of pick your mind and see, your perception versus mine of watching this thing to help me to continue to build up that mental strength so that we can just be just spitting truth, facts, darts of just amazing IndyCar action and helping the listeners understand.
Absolutely, yeah, and you're wearing a great Indianapolis 500 shirt today. Love and respect that. Chase is becoming a more and more dedicated IndyCar fan. I think I first met Chase, for those that are new to this show, at an IndyCar race, I believe, as well. So Chase has been, over the last few years, we know Chase knows NASCAR, obviously. Hey, but this is an IndyCar show. He loves to learn about IndyCar. He's getting into it heavily. And we're only learning and getting better every day when it comes to sharing the knowledge of our great racing series with everyone.
The real open wheel thrills.
Exactly.
Real open wheel thrills.
Real open wheel thrills. So let's get into the St. Pete race. There's obviously a lot that happened. We're going to talk a little bit about the ratings too. Thankfully, the ratings came out before we recorded this show. So that's an interesting conversation that I know a lot of people want to chat about. Maybe some slightly concerning ratings, but we'll get into it. But I'm just going to read through the results just to kind of make sure that, hey, everyone knows what happened. If you didn't watch the race and you're listening to this show, I mean, hey, we respect that. But let's start off from the back, and we're going to go forward. So Marcus Armstrong was 27th, Stingray Robb, Marcus Ericsson, Roman Grosjean, Linus Lundqvist, Colin Brown. Brown. Actually, I said his last name wrong apparently the entire time when I was talking about him in the last show. I had two different people reach out to me, including Bob Pockris, who I thought that was. I was getting a DM from Bob Pockris. I was like, "Oh, hey, what's going on here?" And he's like, "Hey, his last name's pronounced Brown." I was like, "Oh, I appreciate that. That's on me. I've always seen it as Braun, but
he's just like back and forth.
Bob, Bob's listening to our show, so Bob, we appreciate you.
We appreciate you, Bob.
21st was Christian Rasmussen. 20th was Christian Lundgaard. Jack Harvey was 19th. Augustine Canapino, Tom Blomqvist, Graham Rahal, Pietro Fittipaldi in the 15th position. Kiffin Simpson, 14th. Callum Ilott, 13th. Kyle Kirkwood, 12th. Santino Ferrucci, 11th. Into the top 10, Rinus VeeKay, Scott Dixon, Alex Rossi, Felix Rosenqvist, Alex Palou. Now in the top 5, Colton Herta, Will Power, Scott McLaughlin, Pato O'Ward, and Joseph Newgarden was our race winner. A lot happened this weekend. We got into a new practice format. Now, if you're a true dedicated Psycho fan like me, I was watching on Peacock. You know what I mean? I had the first practice pulled up. I was very excited to get into it and see what was going on. And they kind of, tried something new. And I respect this about IndyCar, that we're willing to try things to help, get some drivers some clear track, maybe make use of the practice session as best we can. Because let me tell you, as someone who has done many races at St. Pete now, traffic is worse than LA traffic. Like it is a disaster trying to find a clear lap. I can maybe count on one hand the amount of practice sessions I felt satisfied after, like getting a lap in to kind of put our speed on the board. And so this was just a different effort. Split the field into some groups, try to get some people some clear track. Now, I would say we talked to Joseph a little bit about it, but I'd say it's probably some people liked it, some people didn't. But that's always going to be the way it works. Some people liked the regular practice session, some people didn't. So that was interesting. But getting into qualifying, I thought that that is our first time in the 2024 season. We can't look at testing times. We can't look at anything like that. This is the first time when everyone puts all their speed on the table. They tune the engines up to maximum attack, push those things to the absolute limit. And I thought it was a great display of not a ton of surprises. And let me tell you why. Because we see a very good group of Penske drivers, boom, fast. We know they're fast, right? Not a ton of surprises, except for Ganassi, I would say. The Ganassi situation where Alex Palou not making it out of the first group was wild. Scott Dixon, he didn't look comfortable most of the time. I would say I was very surprised by the Ganassi team. But other than that, Rinus VeeKay obviously making it to the Fast 12, qualifying 7th. Rinus VeeKay very good at St. Petersburg. I don't think that. I think he is out driving that car's ability. You saw Rinus start 7th, and Christian Rasmussen in the 20 started 25th. Well, eventually last because the poor guy had an issue on the grid with the clutch. And I know how that feels. But not to say that team hasn't improved. I'm sure they have, but Rinus has always been fast at St. Pete, no matter how difficult those cars have been to drive there. I think he is a superstar, honestly. I think if you put Rinus in a Penske car, I think he's very scary. But we might not know about that situation. So again, qualifying, when you get into it, Felix Rosenqvist looked outstanding. He is now the track record holder at St. Petersburg. That car and that team looked outstanding. To see him and Joseph fighting it out for the pole in the Firestone Fast 6 session was just, I thought it was fantastic. Very interesting strategy, though. You had Colton Herta just out there pounding laps on the primary tire, the black sidewall tire. And even the broadcasters like Hinch and Townsend were like, well, I think he's going to pit now for the alternate tire. But he just kind of stayed out there and kept running. And from my experience, and the tires are a little bit different this year. They're made a little bit harder for a heavier car because the tires were supposed to be on the cars with the hybrid units, which are heavier. Now, the hybrid units obviously are not introduced until until let's say middle of the year, whenever they decide that that's appropriate and when that happens. So the car is lighter than the tire is supposed to be working for. So that creates a bit of a different window of operation. That creates a bit of a different window of activation when the tires are their best. And so that, that might have been something that Colton was going to play on. Colton was fastest in his group, or I think first or second quickest in his first group, just on the primary tire, I believe. He tried to go out on the alternate and didn't go any faster, which that is a tough crossover, because you think when you go to that alternate tire, it's like tighten up the belts a little bit. We're about to drop some heat on this track. But some places we go, they're not that big of a difference in performance. So this was clearly a weekend where some people, depending on their mechanical philosophy, but depending on their setup philosophy, could get some more out of the alternate tires, and some teams couldn't, which I think is, again, a fascinating side of IndyCar. So, I mean, heading into the race, Chase, did you, when you look at the grid, I mean, you're getting into this, you're getting into our sport, you see Joseph on pole, you're thinking, well, Joseph, he's all about business this year. As you called him, he's all business Joe. He's focused in, he's locked in. Were there any surprises for you? Were there names that you're like, hey, I didn't expect to see this guy, this guy starting up towards the front?
Yeah, no, so I guess the first thing I'll say is that in the beginning of the week when I saw Rosenquist like taking it down, like immediately you want most people that are getting into racing or watching racing will want to think like, okay, that's going to be your race winner, right? Like if you win the pole, if anybody's coming over from F1 with NASCAR, it's not always like that. So it's like for me, I was just like, anything can happen. I like to remain that kind of a guy where anything can happen in a race. You never really know. Winning a pole is great, and that's a feat that shows your competitiveness. But at the same time, when it comes down to strategy, like I'm a big person where I focus on who is your team, who is in the pit, how is that going to translate? Because you have to work that in, right? So I was a little bit surprised with Newgarden getting the pole, because I think this was like his first pole in a really long time at a road course race, right?
I believe so. Yeah, it's certainly at a street course. Yes.
Yeah. So it's not really from what I have learned over the years, like really trying to pay a little bit more attention to IndyCar. I've learned that Joseph, has not been like the guy that you would want to focus on for these types of races. So with Felix being out there, I really just expected him to take the pole and kind of run with it from there and just see how it all shook out when it come, to him coming down pit road. But, I would say that there were definitely some surprises. And like you really already mentioned them, really is just with the Ganassi camp, man. It's like like me personally, going into this year, you would have higher expectation, but you got to wonder, like, does having all these cars, like, maybe spreading things a little too thin? Like, are we maybe,
valid question.
Is it too early to say that we're realizing that maybe this was a little too deep, a little too hard in the paint? I mean, Chip's an ambitious guy, and I wish him the best this year for sure. I mean, I think that it's a great team, but at the same time, it is slightly concerning, especially with Alex Palou, man, especially with all of the hype that's been built behind him this offseason. I mean, you included, talking about that. So it is a little bit shocking to see that it wasn't exactly what they had hoped for. And honestly, I'm just really ready to get to the next one to see how it all shakes out.
Yeah, see, that's the problem with the season starting. Now I want the next race right out the gate. Like I obviously – It hurts my entire soul that I was not racing there, but I have been an IndyCar fan since before I was even a driver, right? So I still can enjoy watching these events. I can enjoy watching my friends compete. I can enjoy watching my enemies compete because I enjoy our sport. And the Ganassi thing is very interesting. I would say, watching Joseph celebrate the pole. We talk about it a little bit in our interview, so be sure to check that one out. But the celebration for that goes to show you how much that it means. Getting a pole position in IndyCar, and thankfully, I have experienced this. It's such a satisfying just accomplishment because there are so many good drivers in this racing series, and Will Power talks about it in a really good way. And hopefully, I'm sure Will Power will win a race, and hopefully we get to chat with him about it. But Will Power, you always kind of notice things in his interviews where he has so much respect for the field that he's racing with. He's like, man, everyone's really good here, and it's, just there might be a couple that we have more question marks about, talent wise, but there's a very, very solid group of drivers in this field. And when you are able to, at the end of the day, be like, yep, no one was faster than me on this day. It's as a driver, and as drivers, big ego folks, it feels really good. And to see Joseph celebrate like that, his engineer, Luke Mason, was my engineer when I qualified on pole in an IndyCar race. So I definitely know that feeling that Luke gets. I know that feeling that Joseph gets. It's an amazing display of we are the best today. And on that day, no one was better than we were. And that's a really cool thing. So I love seeing Joseph, how excited he got, because I had just finished that morning watching an F1 race where Max Verstappen won the race. And it sounded like he was just like, yeah, cool. All right. See you guys later. Like, see you guys at the hotel. And I was like, there's got to be emotion in racing, because this is what it's so hard to win. And yeah. you see, you have to be able to celebrate the fact that, hey, on that day, when you respect how good the competition is, I think Max has kind of just lost all respect for any competition because there's no one competing with him, right? So winning is just kind of like, well, it's just walking out the door in the morning. It's the same thing. Whereas like in IndyCar, you know how hard it is, you know how close it is, you know what you're fighting for. And I love that. So
that's what makes it the best, man. That's what makes it the best open wheel racing right now, is because it is a driver's series. Like, you say what you want to about the car, say what you want to just about ingenuity, whatever. Like,
and there are differences, right? We know that there's 100%. A teams, B teams, C teams.
And it's like, and I get it. And we had a great episode recently where me, you, and our guy Kevin, we all sat down and we talked about this, right? We talked about the differences between NASCAR, IndyCar, and F1. But it's just so important to remember that it's like, when you're really looking at what is the most competitive racing that is all about the driver's ability, along with having the good team that can bring the speed and things like that, it's here. It's here. So yeah, that emotion right there is what shows people how hard it is. And if people aren't seeing that, like you said, people aren't seeing that, they're not gonna care.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the emotion after that poll is a lot about what IndyCar is, and it's hard. And when you succeed in it, you better be the most excited kid on the block. You know what I mean? So I was pumped about that. There was a couple other things before we move into the race. Some traffic issues in qualifying. Alexander Rossi, good friend of mine, good friend of ours. I think there was a couple people throwing blocks, a couple people that were a little bit off sequence. And Alex's interview after qualifying was a very Alexander Rossi interview. He was very upset at what had happened. His social media posts were going to be driving angry on Sunday, which we know is a dangerous Alex Rossi. And, it's just, but that's what St. Pete is. If you get out of sequence in qualifying, if you get on the wrong, hey, this guy went out lap, push, and then you're like, I'm on an out and a warm up and then a push lap, that it's just like everything gets offset. And people, the street courses are quite blind as well. So, you can't really see a lot in your mirrors. But that was interesting to see. Alex was a little bit upset with traffic there. But let's get right into the race. There was really a ton of fuel saving going on right out the gate. And as someone who knows this race and who has been a part of it, and I tweeted about it as well, but at the beginning of this race, if you're towards the back half of the field, you're going to try to pit early to potentially get yourself off sequence, get into a pit early, max push, make up a ton of time. Because if you notice, a lot of the onboard cameras at the beginning, the drivers are lifting off a ton before each corner because they're just trying to make a number. They're trying to make fuel saving numbers. They're trying to make it a two-stop race. And what was interesting about that, though, is the yellow that when Marcus Armstrong crashed, the very first yellow, that kind of helped everyone, but it also forced them to pit earlier than I think they wanted to. Now, I'm actually very surprised that more people didn't pit earlier. I thought when Christian Lundgaard had his puncture at the beginning of the race, I thought, wow, this gives Christian a perfect opportunity to kind of have a forced undercut where he needed to pit. Now he's going to be on crazy fast rubber and heavy, just full attack. It did not work out for him. It could have had the yellows gone a little bit better of a way, but when the yellow came out for Marcus Armstrong, first of all, that's kind of wild that him of all people, we didn't see him make a lot of mistakes last year. Always very solid. You saw his interview afterwards. He hated the fact that happened. But the Ganassi cars were struggling, especially in turn 10. I talk about it a little bit, Joseph, but Ganassi in turn 10, if you watched, you saw Marcus crash there. You saw Scott Dixon have a big moment into turn 10, struggling in the brake zones. It looks like these lighter cars, the different weight distribution, whatever it is, the new tire compounds, they're not agreeing with the Ganassi philosophy at St. Pete on the street circuit. So I thought, and what was crazy is when I saw Linus Lundqvist crash there in turn 10 as well. I was like, oh my gosh, two Ganassi cars crashed in the same corner. But no, Linus got taken out by Grosjean. So that was a different one. But yeah, really interesting start to the race. You had this early yellow before people really wanted to pit, which then made everyone save even more fuel on the next stint because you had to make that stint extra long. It just kind of threw in a couple different question marks. Now, Chase, when you're watching it and you see the big battle in the pits in the first stop, you talked about a little bit of the pits earlier with Felix. His guys got him out in a great spot. We got him out as the virtual leader. And you kind of saw the field get a little jumbled up there too. What was your reaction there?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's always exciting, like, when you're watching them come out. Like, I mean, that's one part of IndyCar that you don't one part of racing that I don't get, like, watching NASCAR or anything else. So that's, like, for me, the most intense moment of the race is knowing that you've got these guys coming at full throttle. These guys have got to get out, and they've got to move. So, I'm not going to say I'm sitting here, like, hoping for chaos or anything like that. But at the same time, it's like, that's typically where it would happen. That's where we get bunched up. So when everything was kind of getting tight like that, you start to think, because, like, it's so the dime a dozen with NASCAR to where on pit road someone's coming out, hit. Yeah. It's a lot more light on its feet with IndyCar. It's way more about, like, am I going to be able to get up to speed in front of these guys? But the tightness definitely showed just, like, how laser focused the guys are. There's really no other way to put it. And I didn't get too I guess I didn't get too, like, worried in that moment because I knew that there's a long race. There was still a lot to go. It was right there. It was like, that was the first stop, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, and you knew there was a lot of time to go, but I did I'm not gonna lie, I did get kind of hype. I think a caution that came out with Lundgaard was up top, and I'm sitting here thinking, can he shake it out? And I'm constantly learning how this works to where it's not going to be the same as NASCAR, where when someone gets out front, they still have a lot that they're going to have to catch up on. So I think that I don't want to jump too far in, but you had mentioned Grosjean taken out and forgive me, one of the Ganassi. Yeah. So he'd taken him out. I was really just I watched Grosjean's interview that he did after he was out of the race. And I wanted to talk to you about this. This is one thing I had on my mind. With him and the history he's had, the career that he's had, is he are we at a point to where it's really starting to hit the downward needle for him? Because I feel like they had a really good qualifying run, and I don't mean to, like, disrespect by it, but it's just like he seemed to just be very, like, I guess, passive. Like, this is 2 years in a row now where he has, he was really close last year. Mm-hmm. And then him and Scott got into that incident. Him and McLaughlin got in the incident. This year, I think it was a gearbox issue that
something like that. Yeah.
Messed him up. he was just so like just more of blaming it on the track. And I'm just not really like a fan. I'm always going to be the type of person where I'm like, you, even if it was something else, like put it on you and then find a way to get better so that you can defeat that. But like to hear him say that, like I just don't think his head's going to be in a good space. And I mean, I guess if I did have somebody that was kind of like the stink of the race, it really was just that interview for me that did it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I actually respected him for taking responsibility of taking out Linus. Like he did be like, "Hey, yeah, like that was on me." Like he did
That
take
part,
out
yeah.
Linus. Yeah, but yeah, that was I think at the start. Like speaking about Grosjean specifically, I mean, if you looked at what happened at the start, you have to sometimes be careful. But he was starting close enough to the front where he braked almost as early as you would brake if you were starting like a couple rows deeper, right? When you're like, oh, everyone's charging into one, we got to kind of watch out for chaos. But he got jumped by 2 cars on the inside of him, and honestly, it could have easily been a crash. Scott McLaughlin, and Rinus VeeKay could have easily wiped out half the field there, but they barely made it through. And Grosjean immediately from then on was just trying to recover, right? And I still think that team can be super proud of what they did. I think they put a car in the Fast 12. They put a car towards the front of the field. Grosjean even in the Fast 6, I believe. And I mean that's an outstanding effort for that team who qualified, I think like 22nd, like way in the back last year with both of their cars. So I think the team can be proud for sure of what they did. But yeah, Grosjean, I mean, he's always going to be fighting, a bit of an uphill battle as that team grows. Now they have a bit of a McLaren partnership, which I think not a lot of people talked about. But yeah, that was tough for Grosjean to be in that position because he knows he's got a lot of work to do. But he did take responsibility for straight up wrecking Linus Lundqvist, which was a bit of a shame. But yeah, there's going to be that's going to be a story that develops as he keeps going. Now, if there's still speed in the car, I'm sure he'll be much happier. But if they go into a struggle, I'm curious to see what the mental outlook is for sure.
Yeah,
but
can't be blaming tracks all the time.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of the track that was tough. St. Pete's a brutal one. There was a couple things that happened that I think were not surprising. We talked about. I'm not sure what happened to Stingray Rob. They didn't really talk a lot about that, but he just kind of got out of his car and walked away. I don't know what was going on there. I saw the right front. I saw the right front brake might have been on fire, but like that's kind of just normal if you just happen to stop the car. So I'd love to know what happened there. There seemed to be a couple mechanicals that people didn't really mention. We had Marcus Ericsson, mechanical issue. Grosjean with a mechanical issue. It seemed like Stingray had a mechanical issue. Normally in IndyCar, we don't see that. I would say that the manufacturers do such a great job putting stuff out there that is, bulletproof, that I was kind of surprised to see a few different failures. So that was an interesting surprise. I would say let's give credit where credit is due. I think Kyffin Simpson had a great day. I think we've talked about this many times before. Kyffin Simpson, very well-funded individual, was the lowest qualifying Ganassi driver, which is, I think, to be expected, but just basically did not make mistakes, put a solid run in, and finished in the top 15, which I think is as a rookie, you have to be excited about that. And I again, despite my opinions, like what I think of Santino Ferrucci as well, I will give them credit where credit is due. And so Kyffin Simpson deserves credit here. Did not put a wheel wrong. Cars are very difficult to drive at St. Pete, first IndyCar race of his career. And all the corners were on it, and you got some points. So there you go. I would say the biggest surprise on the negative side was Linus Lundqvist, his teammate. When we saw Linus get in the street course at Nashville for Meyer Shank Racing last year, it was as if an angel had descended upon the racetrack, and like this guy immediately signs with Ganassi. This is the greatest thing that's ever happened. That just goes to show you how difficult this sport is. Everyone can have their great day, and that might create an entire future for you, which is awesome. But we can't forget that Linus did not forget how to drive, right? Linus is going to be fine. But, Linus pretty much ran around the back teens of the pack for most of that race until he got wrecked by Grosjean. And he wasn't really in the fight. So that just shows that Ganassi as a team struggled, right? When your best car is finishing 6th with Alex Palou, that means that team has had a tough day. And the reason why Alex Palou and Scott Dixon are up there is because of the experience they have, right? When Kiffin and Linus don't have that experience in the Ganassi environment, the Ganassi team, of course they're going to struggle a little bit more than Scott Dixon and Alex Palou. But that was an interesting one for me. I thought Linus, I was very surprised he wasn't as sporty as let's say we saw in the Nashville debut. So very interesting side there.
Also saw that Kiffin, I believe he had the second fastest lap behind Newgarden too in this race, if I'm not mistaken. There you go. So
I think
that's pretty good for a rookie guy right there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're happy to give credit where credit's due. A couple other things from this race. Rinus VeeKay, again, I think we have to give him credit as well. A top 10 for that team is obviously very important. They did not get many of those at all last year. A solid start for him. But Rinus has always been fast at St. Pete. I think Rinus could have easily finished in the top 10 there last year. He's always been good at St. Pete. That's a big, that track suits his driving style very, very well. So credit to them where credit is due. Tough day for his teammate though, in the 20 car. Christian Rasmussen ended up a lap down, clutch failure or something at the beginning of the race. Couldn't even take the start kind of like where he was supposed to line up on the grid. So there's still a bit of quite a difference in both of those cars and where they end up in the races. But I'm sure, we'll be very curious to follow that as it goes. And honestly, the McLaren cars, I think I had heard a couple different rumors that, McLaren's going to dominate. They did not dominate. Penske was the dominant force. Penske, I mean, they almost locked out the entire podium. Like Pato was the only one who ruined an entire Penske podium. And it even looked like that last stint of the race, you were going to see, maybe Scott McLaughlin or Will Power kind of make a move on Pato, but he had another great finish for that team.
Major flags from Penske too, and I think I definitely want to dive into some of the off-track stuff where Penske was brought up this past week.
Yeah. Now, again, Penske. This might be a bit of a controversial topic, but Penske has done the most testing over the offseason. They have been in the hybrid, testing program. They've been on track a ton trying to sort out this hybrid system for the IndyCar series. And someone had mentioned that to me earlier. They were like, oh, yeah, look, the top 4 is essentially all the drivers who have done the most testing over the offseason. Now, that's not a confirmed like, oh, yeah, that's exactly why it happened. But, the biggest teams that are the highest up, that have the biggest operations, that have, a lot of support, usually get the most testing. And the teams that maybe didn't get as much testing, even Santino Ferrucci had a great day that's a Penske partnership now. So, not surprised by that speed, but still the more testing, the better. Even if you say, oh, well, it's hybrid test, the drivers are in the car. The drivers are in the car circulating. The team can get some laps on whatever they want to run, even though the IndyCar tries to limit the testing to, hey, we don't want to make this unfair, but someone is doing more testing than other people, and that is always helpful. So an interesting point.
I mean, I feel like that's kind of a common sense thing too, right? Like that, like just like if you're getting in the car when there's new features and additions, like we kind of saw that in Phoenix with NASCAR this past week, and a lot of the guys that hit that, they were up there in the top 10. So it's just find a way to test.
Mm-hmm. Testing
Do
helps.
all the testing you can.
Absolutely. So we, overall, you could dive into every small element of the race. I do think that, it was not the most exciting race. Like, hey, let's be honest, not the most exciting race of all time. And something we talked to Lee Diffie about in the last show, I wish there was a little bit more focus on, some battles in the middle of the pack. I think we saw, drivers like Alex Rossi coming through the field a little bit. I would say he had a strong day from where he started. Callum Ilott, I would like to, we saw him a little bit, but there were a lot of drivers, that we didn't see at all. And I just wish there would have been a little bit more because at the front, all they were doing was saving fuel. So I like, no one is going to pass anyone unless like something happens. But like, you look at Joseph saving fuel, you look at P2 who's saving fuel. So like, they're all staying at the same gap. And so if you can tell, okay, these guys are all saving fuel, in the middle of the pack, there's going to be people that are trying to save fuel, but then there's going to be people who are trying to push to make up some positions to maybe then pit early. So I wish the director was maybe a little bit like, hey, understand there's a lot of fuel saved, probably not going to be some passes for the lead. There's not really a tight battle. Let's go to like 15th and see what's going on. Now, a couple times they did that only because Linus Lundqvist had an onboard camera. They got to like go to those onboard cameras to give them a bit of TV time. But still wish there would be a little bit more focus on the racing. Like, it's difficult to pass at St. Pete, yes, but there was some racing going on. I literally was watching the timing, and I'd see, oh, that person just passed that person, and that person just passed that person back. So there was something going on, and I would have appreciated seeing that. And then I think the podium, pretty predictable. I think those three are going to be fighting for the championship all year. I think you're going to see Ganassi return to stardom at some point, obviously. But the way Penske started, the way McLaren started, I'm not surprised by that at all. And other than that, I mean, Chase, what was your overall impression of the race? Like, what would you rate it? Would you, obviously it was not the most exciting race in the world. Completely okay with that. And Joseph even talks about it in our interview with him in a bit. But I think it was a great start for the powerhouses of our sport. And a couple decent finishes for some people that probably needed some excitement.
While
heading into
a lot
the
of
season.
folks may not think that the on-track product was exciting, it really just depends on what your perception of excitement. Like right now, there's a lot to talk about after this race. There's a lot to talk about going into the next race. Like we've just covered a lot of these stories that are kind of developing now and that are going to be really talked about over the next few weeks. So to me, that's exciting because now we have we have the storyline, we have the narrative, right? And so
the baseline, yeah.
Take your first race with a grain of salt, I guess you would say. Like, I mean, you've talked about the challenges at this track, how tough this track is. It's not a Daytona 500. It's not, it's what it is, and the fact that we got to see. If you would have been watching the qualifying over the weekend, you'd have saw that level of excitement like we discussed before we get into this interview with Joseph and talk about it more. That was exciting. And just the landscape of St. Pete, watching them be out there, understanding that, like, it is one of those things you got to go to, which attendance records off the charts. So that was great. But
yeah, a great crowd there. And again, my mom even thought she saw you there, Chase.
Yeah.
So there must have been a ton of people with great mustaches there. I'm not sure. She's like, oh, I saw Chase there. It's like, he's not there.
Man.
So,
I want to know if she got into like a full-blown conversation with like, you would know, like she would know, like your mom is like great. I love your mom to death. Like
she's locked in.
Got so much good energy and good high spirits. So it's always good to see her. But yeah, unfortunately, tell her it wasn't me. I'm sorry. It was the wrong Mario at the IndyCar race.
The wrong mustache.
Yeah. So, but I'm going to say this much, like don't, if this was your first weekend watching or you're listening to this show now and you're new to this, like give it time. We got a really cool, exciting race coming up at Thermal Club that has never been done before. That really is just going to, I feel like it's going to be action packed because there is $1 million on the line. So I'm excited to see
absolutely
how that shakes out. That's going to be, and they can have a little fun. There's no points on the line, but like that's it's right out the gate. It's just, hammer down. And that's what Joseph did this weekend. A lot of the, I'm just, like I said, the big one for me is just watching this Chip Ganassi story. Like, I want to see how this shakes out and if they start focusing their efforts on certain drivers because of how spread thin that they are, if that becomes the case when it comes to a championship hunt. But, I overall, what is your perception of what a good race is? I thought it was good. I thought it was great for me. It was exciting to see it get kicked off.
I agree.
So it's all about
what's
in here and what you're watching.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, obviously, Joseph was dominant. Is Joseph our Max Verstappen this year? I don't think so.
Yeah,
But
let's not go too
he
deep.
definitely.
Let's say
Let's not go too far. Let's not go too
if he
far.
doesn't.
Pole race win. Let's not classify him as the king and the champion yet. In F1 though, you can do that probably. Max Verstappen 2-0, and the
a lot of
season's
computers.
over. So that
a lot of computers, a lot of good driving. So.
By the way, if you did not know, there was an F1 race that happened, and the same person won the race that has won most of them.
That's cool.
You know what? Again, I like to talk about all motorsport on this show at times. However, we are fully IndyCar focused right now. I would say there was only one thing exciting about the F1 race. Ollie Behrman got to drive in a Ferrari Formula One car for his first ever race in Formula One, which was really cool. That was a cool story to follow. Great points. Good for Ollie Behrman. But again, I wish he would have sounded more excited for finishing 7th in his first F1 race, scoring points. At the end of the radio, they're like, good job. And he's like, yeah, that was frustrating. It's like, dude, just be excited. Like, come on. Like, I know Europe, everyone's angry at something for someone in motorsport, but like, let's be excited. Like, let's be happy that, hey, you know what? I finished 7th in a Ferrari, my first race. I'm 18. Heck yeah. Thanks, boys. Let's go. Like, I can't wait for that next one. But anyway. That was my F1 tangent. That's F1
Other
news.
Than F1, I wanted to ask you. I'm a little upset at myself. I didn't get to watch it. How did the Indy NXT race go? I want to know. Like, what did we have shake out in Indy NXT?
Indy NXT. Well, Nolan Siegel, very very successful. Nolan Siegel, who is going to be an IndyCar driver this year, was very very successful over the weekend. Jacob Abel, friend of the show, he ended up on the podium, I believe, as well. But yeah, I didn't get to watch a ton of the Indy NXT stuff. But did kind of pay attention as much as I could. I wish the Indy NXT account would be like on their Twitter profile, be like, hey, here's the results of each session. I would like to see that because like I had to dig for some of the results of different things here and there. But I think Indy NXT is so exciting because there's a lot of cars and there's going to be a lot of differences in the finishes. People are going to have top 10 days that count for the championship, but. Jacob Abel, Nolan Siegel, strong competitors so far. Miles Rowe, our guy, he's going to be good as well. So I think there's a lot to be excited about there. But getting into the ratings real quick, let's kind of wrap up our St. Pete talk by talking about the ratings from the weekend. This is a tough one. As IndyCar fans know who have followed this for a long time, when the ratings come out, it's almost like you're a little terrified. Like I just sit there and think maybe this is the week where we've appealed to more people because I still don't know why NASCAR over the weekend got over 4 million viewers, which is a ton of people. And to be honest, I'm not a huge like Phoenix. The Phoenix race to me isn't, I would say, the most exciting race. I think a lot of the drivers, weren't necessarily super pumped about the package they had out there. 4 million people. They were up on their viewership. Formula One, down 40% or something on their viewership. So Formula One, clearly people have kind of got tired of that product because, again, it was a perfect time to watch a race. Saturday, mid-morning, easy to watch. It wasn't like a 2 a.m. start where like no one could watch it. But there's no excitement in that racing. So, if you watch it just to say that you're watching it, awesome. But IndyCar still is getting more viewers than Formula One. However, IndyCar just under 1 million viewers. And again, we've talked about on this show for the last couple of years about, hey, 1 million people is a solid number that we want to be able to consistently get to. And we were a little bit down on last year, but we were also going up against Caitlin Clark and the women's college basketball that got 3 million viewers. We're literally going head to head against that. So that's a tough one. Caitlin Clark is electricity to watch on the court right now. She was even in Colton Herta's car. Her signature was on Colton Herta's car. She's got a deal now with Gamebridge. She's probably obviously coming to the Indiana Fever. Very excited about that. Me and Alex Rossi looked into season tickets for the Indiana Fever, big WNBA guys, but we could not get them. So could not get. We couldn't get the tickets that we wanted.
I think we've got a formula, Connor. I just want to say, like you talked about Caitlin Clark getting 3 million views, NASCAR 4 million views. It's painting the compelling story. So we got to get, like Joseph, compelling story this weekend, and Netflix. I think that
Yeah.
right there alone, like I'm telling you, like
NASCAR Netflix.
Netflix needs to be on race. Like they should sponsor cars. They really should at this point because 4 million views. Like I never thought.
That's a big
Dude,
number.
from a year,
It's a big number.
like
Yeah.
working working in the NASCAR industry for the last 5 years, I've watched the numbers be low, and now all of a sudden this jump has happened. It's like if that can happen there, it can happen here. It happened in F1, so
It can. Yeah.
it's the hype, man. It is the hype at the end of the day. I know we have racing purists out there, and I love them to death, and there's always going to be that, but at the same time, the world has changed. Things are different. You want to get those eyeballs. You want to see your sport at the top of the top. Build the hype.
Yeah, I agree. For some reason, I still don't understand why we are at where we're at. I don't understand why we can kind of barely eclipse that 1 million number. There is a lot of hype for this season. I feel like there's a great job that's been done by IndyCar marketing, but we have to do more. There's something
so much,
And again, I don't have the answer to it. Obviously, I hate to be the one. And I was talking to my stepdad, Doug Bowles, about this the other day. It's like we can talk all the crap we want about what's going on, but do we have a solution? I don't have a solution right now, and I'm willing to admit that I don't know what that is. I would like to just see our sport more. I would like to just see it in the mainstream more. I would like to see something, I see NASCAR advertised, on basically any show that I watch. I just see it more.
Yeah. We can make a list.
So I think
we might not have a solution, but let's make a list.
We just have to put it in front of, we just need to put it. And I've oddly enough, having this show has actually kind of made me aware of how difficult it is sometimes for people to find things, right? Our show, it's essentially you type in Speed Street and you can find it on any podcast platform. You can find it on the YouTube. It's very simple to find, but until you put it right in front of people's faces. I remember, a couple of our episodes were on the Dale Jr. download feed for a while, and a couple of people listening, they're like, "Oh yeah, we hear your show on the Dale Jr. download." And I was like, "Well, do you have you listened to it?" They're like, "No, I've only seen it on the download." I was like, well, "We have a show that's every week." But it's tough for people unless you put it. It just goes to show you got to put it right in front of them. You got to put it directly in their line of sight and be like, "Oh, that's interesting. What is this? How?" And again, NBC, not hard to find. NBC is
around for years.
One of the major networks. It's right there, and you can find it very simply. NBC, they work hard too. I see it. They advertise for the IndyCar races on different shows. Good Morning America. You got whatever morning show is on NBC. They were pumping things out about it. So it's just, I don't know what needs to be done, but we have to improve on this. If we continue to get 980,000 or whatever it is, 1 million people, that's great. But we just have to get those base numbers slightly higher. Now, I would say a base number for season opener on network television, we're kind of always at 1 million, but I don't know why we haven't made that jump yet. Why weren't we 1.7 million? You know what I mean? What portion of the 4 million people that are watching the NASCAR race can we maybe attract to an IndyCar race? Because for me, all weekend, now again, I appreciate all motorsport. And my girlfriend Amy was with me this weekend at my house, and I think there was a racing session on every single day in my house all throughout the day. You can watch it all. You can have it on the TV. So if you wanted to watch NASCAR, you could have easily warmed up by watching the IndyCar race. You know what I mean? IndyCar race is great. Boom, NASCAR's on afterwards. Get a little bit of that going. I don't know what is the next step to compelling people to watch our sport, because I do believe we have a great form of entertainment. I do believe we have some of the most talented drivers in the world, as every series can obviously, try to claim, but we really do. And
they just got to show the world who they are.
We'll just see what happens.
Connor, at the end of the day,
the
drivers have to show the world who they are. Get a social media account.
And if you have suggestions, please feel free to interact with the Speed Street Twitter account.
Yeah.
Please interact with our Twitter accounts. Interact with anyone anywhere, because I think it's important not to just throw stones at IndyCar or anything like that, because we all want to be in a better spot. Like, I love this sport. It's put food on my table. Like, this is what I enjoy doing. I will be a part of this.
And you can want it to be better. You can want it to reach the top.
But we can all want it to be better, but let's not just like criticize. Let's just be like, hey, how do we figure this out? Like, yeah, I do believe that our series should have easily more viewers than 975,000, whatever it was. So I hope we get there. I do believe that we will get there. But it's going to take a lot of work. There's clearly people watching motorsport over the weekend. You have 900 and something thousand watching F1 in the morning. You got 980,000 watching the IndyCar race in the early afternoon, and you got 4 million people. Now, if there are 4 million people watching a motor race, I know they're very different, IndyCar and NASCAR, but there's got to be some way to at least get 500,000 of those people to be like, hey, you know what? IndyCar seems cool too. I don't understand why we haven't been able to do that yet, but that fight is for another day.
We can do it. I believe
we can. All right, let's get to Joseph Newgarden, our chat with the winner of the St. Petersburg Grand Prix. We've had a great discussion, I think, about this race so far, and we get to dive deep into what the winner thought as well. So thanks to our new partners at the NTT Indycar Series. NTT, we love you for supporting our series as well. Here is the winner of the St. Petersburg Grand Prix, Joseph Newgarden. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this week we have our first week of a fantastic new partnership with the NTT Indycar Series. We have an American man, a hero to many folks, a hero of mine, a hero of many young children across the entire planet, someone who doesn't care about what you're doing in your life at all because he wanted to eliminate distractions. And guess what? It paid off. Joseph Newgarden, the pilot of the PPG Chevrolet for Team Penske, is here. You're a winner, Joseph. You eliminated everyone from the entire spectrum of racing this weekend. Pole victory, and you won by a dominant amount of time. So congratulations. How are we feeling? Are we feeling good?
I feel good. I like that intro, Connor. I like that. Yeah, it was a good weekend. It was a great weekend for us, and the team did an excellent job, and our partners did an excellent job. I was really proud of Team Chevy and what they delivered for us. But I'm feeling really good to start the year. It's always great to come out and see that you can still produce. I think that for me is an interesting point, because I've got a lot of confidence, but every year you come into a new season and you just wonder if you can still do the job, and it's fun to be able to show up and achieve a good result.
Well, I certainly didn't have any wonder in my mind at all. We all knew that it was going to happen potentially like that. Let's start by getting into the weekend kind of early on, right? If people watched on Peacock, practice was a little different, right? We had some group. We tried some grouping. Some people liked it, some people didn't. I watched it and I was like, I had no idea where we were. I saw one group go out, and then I saw another group, and then another group, and then I was like, wait, there's three. Did people like that, do you think? Do you think that paid off when it came? Now, St. Pete, obviously a very tight racetrack, and we do that. They did this grouping to separate some cars and maybe find some clear track. Did people like it, do you think?
I think it was a good attempt. And, okay. Look, the spirit of this was to try something new. Probably the most difficult track that we go to during the year is Detroit, where it's pretty narrow, and trying to fit 27 cars onto the track is difficult at the same time. St. Pete's very similar to that. And so when we're going to go to these facilities where we need more spacing for 27 cars, we thought, well, let's break it up, whether it be, alternating groups, which is what you saw at St. Pete, or if it's a staggered session where, there's one group and then there's the next. I think it's going to be hard to get something that pleases everybody. There's always going to be a loser in this situation. Going back to the point, the spirit was, though, let's try something. We could talk about it all day unless we try something. I don't know that it worked super well. Having done it, I'd probably just go back to the old format, but I would still be game to try something at Detroit because I think we're going to need. I think that's the one track for sure. We're going to need split groups, and whether it's this way where it's alternating or it's just two different groups, I do think we got to do something.
Yeah, I agree. It was very interesting. And heading into qualifying, obviously, again, traffic, very difficult, right? Now, you and your engineer, Luke, who I would commit probably several egregious felonies to work with again in my life, my lifetime. He is a very talented man. I love the way you guys shout at each other and encourage each other, essentially. I love this energy. You celebrating the fact that you got pole, I think is a great thing for sport, right? I watched F1 over the weekend. Max didn't even sound excited that he won the race, right? I didn't. I want to see some emotion. You like to see that. For me, it kind of lights a spark in my chest. I'm like, oh, he knows how hard this is in the IndyCar series. And when you get a pole, that's like one of the greatest feelings ever because there are so many good drivers out in our field. So that was something that you guys have been working on. You want to get poles everywhere else other than ovals, right? Because we know that you can do that. That's easy. I mean, I think everyone knew that you could probably get a pole on a street course and a road course, but here we are. We focused on something new. And is this going to be the entire rest of the season? No one else has a chance of qualifying first?
I highly doubt it. I highly doubt it. You know, the weekend was more enjoyable because it went so well. You know, they're not all going to go like that. They just
nope.
It's impossible, I think, to come into IndyCar and perform at this level every weekend. I don't expect that. You know, I didn't expect to come into St. Pete and just get the pole. I mean, for me, it's so difficult nowadays to get it right. It's always been tough, but it gets tougher every year. You know, it used to be 5-10 years ago, you could just put in a decent lap and that would probably transfer you. You know, and a decent lap might be, a tenth, 2/10 off your max potential. And you go, wow, that was a pretty decent lap. I got it put together. If you just do a decent lap nowadays, you are not transferring. I mean, you have got to hit your theoretical. You've got to nail your lap. And St. Pete, we had to do that. I put the car on the line and, was brushing the walls. I was trying to get everything I could out of it. And it took that to make it to every round. And we put a really good one in on the Fast Six, and it just doesn't always happen like that. So I definitely was fired up. We knew we had to be better in that respect on a race weekend and just on road and street courses in general. And, to be able to prove that right out of the box, it was super satisfying.
Yeah, and I'm going to let Chase jump in here, but I wanted to say that is why the elite are elite. You guys won the Indy 500 last year. You won a ton of races last year. But the entire offseason, you're working on an area that you feel that you guys need to improve. And that I think a lot of people get lost in IndyCar racing sometimes where it's like, well, we'd like to focus on something here, but like you have to do everything in your power to be the best and to beat the best. And so that's a perfect example of like you guys put in a ton of work in the offseason. Well, it's like, well, that's Penske and Joseph. They're already winning everything. It's like, no, you have to be wanting to win every single race, every single session. And so I respect that. Now, Chase, go ahead. You jump in here for Joseph.
Yeah, man, there's so much that we can bring up here. I know we only have very limited amounts of time, but I just want to first say congratulations. I've given you a new nickname this year, All Business Joe. That's you. So I'm going to call you that.
Love it.
And I think it's great, and I think it fits you well. I mean, I'm looking at the backdrop here. You got some nice helmets. You got a nice, trophy, a hat. It looks great. I mean, businessman all day. So I want to say this, though. Watching the race this weekend, there really wasn't many times where I had any feeling that something was going to go wrong for you. From the jump, you were lasered in. You were ready to go. And it really wasn't. There wasn't one moment.
Connor keeps getting thumbs down on his screen.
I don't even know what that means, but I'm there must be a new software.
Chase, you've been talking, and like it just keeps giving thumbs down from Connor's screen.
Oh, wow.
It's making me laugh.
Oh wow!
Hey, I'm giving it thumbs up, so keep going.
All right, now there's
now
the
we got
celebration.
What is this?
It's the celebration. Look at that.
I like this software, whatever we got going on.
I was listening to you as well at the same time, Chase. It was just killing me.
Oh no, that's like that. Like, look, meme level to 100. That makes it. Hopefully, I'll be able to see the thumbs downs. I didn't get to see them, so yeah, I want to watch that happen in real time. But yeah,
No.
no, I made some nice photos this weekend online. I know you can't see them because you don't follow anybody, but I understand at the same time you got to stay focused. All right, so I saw the focus; it was driven in, and it kind of going into really a more of a really serious topic. I mean, kind of playing to what Connor was saying. What it takes to be at the highest level possible in this sport is like just like immense work. Like just the toughest of tough can't do it. I mean, Tom Brady doesn't eat tomatoes because it could mess up his internals. So I want to say that, it's easy to think you're going to have the vision, like I want to win, I want a championship. What does Joseph Newgarden want by the time he steps out of the race car for good? What is your long-term plan? Like, where do you see yourself at the end of your career? What is it that you are striving for every time you get in that car?
Well, I didn't know that we were going to dive into this type of discussion, but yeah, I mean, I look, what motivates me are the greats. There's no doubt about it. When I do something, I'm all in, and I want to be the best at it. I mean, competition is so essential to me as a person. I've just got to be competing at everything I do in life. And sometimes that's, it's difficult to be wired that way because I'm a perfectionist at the same time. And it's a bit of a curse. You can't do everything perfectly, even though you're trying. But I say all that because, what motivates me is trying to be the very best of the best in IndyCar. I mean, I know what the records are. I know it's 67 wins. I know it's 7 championships. I know it's 4 Indy 500s. Like I know what those numbers are, and I would like to be at that level, if not more. And that's why I keep doing it. I think you got to have big goals, and you've got to try and strive to be the best. It's what motivates me every year. So that's where I'm at, and that's where that's what I look towards when I look for motivation.
That's real right there.
I love that.
I want to see like a whiteboard, a gigantic whiteboard, all the goals, like have check boxes like that. We'll get a graph. We'll do trends. I'm here for you, brother. I'm here. I'm ready to see.
I like that.
I would also say, I don't think I'm unique in that way. I think, most racers, some will tell you, hey, they don't look at stats and they don't care about the numbers. I don't know that that's true. I think all of us are extremely competitive. I think everybody knows the numbers. It's not unique to me.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be shy to tell you that I know that. I mean, what's wrong with that? I think it's great to chase that stuff.
Yeah, I think what makes you unique is the fact that you were killing it in the scooter racing game at one point in your life. I think that's the unique. Like how did that play into everything that you're doing today?
It was my only outlet, Chase. It's a real story. It's not normal. This pre-Connor Daly here, like literally a year or two before I met Connor.
Yeah.
So
you were like a child.
Yeah. No, I was like 11 years old. Used to get my hair cut at this barber shop in town, and there was a skateboard shop next to it. They started selling motorized scooters. I kept getting shot down on go-karts. I've been begging my parents since I was a kid to drive go-karts. Wouldn't do it. I said, well, can I get this motorized scooter? Can you do something? Throw me a bone here, And they finally bought me this motorized scooter. And then I looked online. I'm like, can I race these things? Can I suit these up? And I learned how to modify these scooters and make them even better. And then I learned there was a sanctioned International Scooter Cross Association League that you could race these. That's just a real thing. It was a real thing. We would show up to parking lots and race these on the West Coast. And I was like, I'm going to be the greatest scooter racer in the world. And that got a little bit silly after 12 months. And then I think my dad was like, okay, let's try and go do something legitimate. But I was all for it. I didn't know any better when I was 11 years old. I was going to race whatever you gave me.
It's incredible.
I love that. I didn't know you were a king of the scooter game as well, but turns out that doesn't surprise me at all.
The scooter pioneer.
The scooter pioneer. That's amazing. That's an amazing story. Joseph, getting back to the St. Pete race real quick. Tires this year. I want to get deep into the details. Tires, obviously, if people were aware, were designed for the heavier car, right? Designed for the hybrid unit, designed for essentially a car that is, not as light as we ran it at St. Pete. Did that adjust the strategy a ton? Was there, tire? Because for me, as a spectator, right, I'm not really seeing a ton of tire wear, honestly. I saw a lot of fuel saving, but not a ton of people really, struggling, it seemed, with tires. Did that not play in as much as a normal IndyCar street race, you'd say?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think there was some degradation, but it was not near what it's been. Certainly not where it was at the level last year. I think Firestone has trended softer with their compounds the previous couple years, and now they've gone back the other way. And you just pointed out the reason they did that. These tires were built in preparation for the hybrid units and the increased weight of the car. And I think when that comes online, middle of the year, you're going to understand why they went that direction with the tire. And I think naturally this suited some cars more than others. You see this when there's a difference in tire compounds and construction, that some teams have a natural setup that fits it and some others don't. I think that shook up the field a bit. And then on the strategy side, for sure, I think the yellow hurt things a lot on lap 26. I think if anyone was going to try something, that just put everybody on the same program. And here's one thing I would say too, when it comes to, tires and durability and just, race strategy, we can't have, the greatest race every single time out. And there's circumstances that build into that. I think the caution really hurt that on our race on lap 26. And sometimes you get that. It's the exact same thing in NASCAR or Formula One or sports car racing. Sometimes you just, things factor in where you don't have the most amazing race. And certainly it wasn't the most entertaining from an action standpoint, but there were still people doing some great things across the field. And there was still action to look for if you're a motorsport fan that, kept you entertained. It was just maybe not the traditional action-packed product that, some people now expect.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. We're greedy as a fan base, right? Like we want to see the greatest racing ever. But for me, I honestly was entertained. Like, and I'm someone who lives and breathes this sport, and I could see the strategy playing out. Obviously, you were very dominant, but there was a lot of racing going on behind you as well. That was quite good, and you even had to fight for it. Obviously, after coming out of the pits, not in the lead, right? You had to fight for it. You had to get back to the front, and I think that was great. Were you a little surprised with how Ganassi struggled a little bit? I was a little bit surprised as to kind of them in general. They seemed to really struggle. Like the turn 10 brake zone looked like the worst situation ever for a Ganassi car. Like you had Marcus Armstrong crashing there. You had a couple different shots during the race of Dixon locking up the rears into the turn 10 brake zone. Like there was a lot that they seemed like they struggled. Was that a bit of a surprise for you guys?
It was very surprising. I don't know what they had going on, but yeah, watching the race back and the issues that they seem to have in, commonality in turn 10 specifically was interesting. I don't know their program and I don't know how they were affected, but I thought they looked quite strong in testing. So there was really nothing that pointed to them, coming to St. Pete and expecting them to struggle. So, IndyCar is so unpredictable. This could be a small indication of them throughout the year, or it could be a blip. I mean, it could just be a St. Pete specific thing too. It's really hard to say until you get more, data points to kind of string together. But yeah, it was very surprising.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to get one more in about the race, then I'll let Chase jump in. But who do you think was a surprise for you this weekend? Was there any surprises you think that like either in qualifying or the race that kind of stuck out to you? I thought there were not a ton of surprises overall. I thought, okay, you expect to see a lot of these guys up front. I expected to see, at least several different cars in the Fast Six, several different teams, which there was. I think for the rumors that I heard, a lot of people were saying that McLaren was going like, oh, we think the McLaren guys are going to be winning St. Pete. Now, again, they were good, but not really on the Penske stratosphere. Who do you think was there? Was there any surprises that we can kind of maybe look for as the season goes on?
I was surprised by Ganassi again. I was surprised by Rahal, in particular Lundgaard.
Agreed, yeah.
I really thought, they didn't have a stellar weekend. I thought they would probably come out a little bit stronger. I was surprised by Felix. I wasn't. I sort of expected Felix to, find his footing pretty well at this new group, and I think they have a good car underneath them. But I thought Felix did a really good job on the weekend. Like, he was super
Very
impressive.
Good, yeah.
I mean, he probably, he was just a whisker away from getting the pole and very much could have been the pole winner. So I thought he did a good job. And not that was a surprise, but it was maybe nice to just see it for him.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Chase. Jump in.
Yeah, no, you're kind of playing back into that too, like at the race in general. I saw at the end, I know that you and Scotty Mack obviously got to have a good dynamic being teammates, being up in the paddock together. There was a photo that I saw of you. You were kind of up and you had like this stank face like at him, and he's just turning a bottle up, like walking by. Like, what was that about? What was that?
I think
it's a
that
great
guy's
photograph.
thirsty. I did see this photo actually.
It's a great photograph.
He looked thirsty. He's on the thirsty threes, and those guys stay thirsty. All right. I think that's kind of their thing though. Like, but I don't. Do they want to be thirsty? Or do they want to be quenched? I just don't understand.
Wow.
Like we
Calling it out, yeah.
we got to get these thirsty threes, sorted out with their liquid.
Yeah.
But
is there a water shortage at Team Penske? Like, what's going on? Like, what's happening? Do we need to refill those giant
We're gonna call you
2-gallon
Joseph
jugs? Yeah,
that'll be an alternate.
Hey,
now.
There's nothing wrong with that though. Sometimes you just got to stay thirsty. I get that. It's not a big deal. That's good. That's my hashtag. Stay thirsty.
Stay thirsty.
No, I thought the photo was funny because it looks like I'm like, what is this guy doing? But I was trying to get Scott to come up onto the podium for a photo, and that's what you captured. But he was just chugging that thing, like living life, as you could see.
He was laser focused,
and he should. He had a great day, so he should be living it up.
Absolutely,
I love it. Hey, real quick, as I respect your time, you got a lot going on today, and I'm honestly pumped that I honestly think that we're probably going to at least interview another 5 or 6 times this year. So get used to it. We're going to be ready for it. Give us kind of a preview of the thermal weekend. Obviously, non-points race. That's next up on the calendar for us. I'm going to be out there, so I'm going to be interacting and checking it out. What can fans expect? Do you think? I mean, I don't personally know how well this track is going to race. Like, having tested there, I'm not entirely sure, but we have to be excited about it. There's a lot of money on the line. Everyone wants money. That seems to be a fun thing to have. Can you let the fans know a little bit what to kind of look for and what might excite some onlookers?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm sort of in the same boat as you. Like, I don't know exactly how this is going to go down, but I'm really excited for it. I mean, first off, there is a ton of money on the line, which is always interesting to play for. Thermal actually was really enjoyable to drive. I loved being there last year for the preseason test.
Wonderful place. Yeah.
I'm with you. I don't know how it'll race, and that's not good or bad. I don't know. It's going to be super interesting to see, how we take to it in that condition. This event is very much exhibition style. It's made for TV. I think that's cool. I love that stuff. I mean, I'm glad that we're adding in this type of layer, but I'm like a lot of fans and onlookers. I don't know how it's going to go, and I'm really interested to see how different teams approach it, because in a lot of ways, it's also a big test. It runs into this exhibition at the end of the weekend, but before that, you have a ton of testing time. So I don't know how people are going to utilize that and how they're going to run that into their program. In a lot of ways, it's a very significant weekend because any time that you have at the track is important. And I think people are going to try and utilize that to make their race season cars better. So, I don't have a great answer for you. I think that's the reason to tune in as well, is because we just don't know how it's going to go.
That's all right. I like it. One more real quick. This might be, an interesting one, but it seemed to come up during the broadcast. I had a tweet about it that I actually enjoyed quite a lot. So when you unfollowed everyone, right, entirely the whole group of people, why wasn't it like, let's leave the wife? You know what I mean? Like Lewis Hamilton follows like 2 people. Like, your wife can't even be followed on the internet, bro. She's out here like loving your son and doing cool things. You guys were in Vegas recently, which looked awesome, by the way. I'd like to talk to you offline about that. But was there no like, hey, it's just going to be the wife. Like, that's number one. What was going on there?
I mean, look, where do you draw the line? Here's the thing.
Where do you draw the line?
It's like inviting people
no
to your
siblings.
wedding.
Yeah, no siblings. Yeah.
You got the wedding list here, and you're like, yeah, the wife makes the cut, obviously.
Yep.
It's different for me. I have a love-hate relationship with social media. In one way,
and I know this.
You know this.
I remember you saying to me, like, I can't wait to live in a day where I don't have to use social media. And I'm like, you know what? there is a lot of peace to that. I would assume a lot of peace to not having to use it. But we're in an interesting era of our lives right now.
Look, in one way, it's great. It's a good connection point to fans, and I do love that. I really do. I love the way
you are good with the fans. Yeah, good. Yeah.
Well, but for everybody, if you're into sports or you're into a specific league or you're a motorsports fan, people want these connection points, and I love for them to have that. So I want to still deliver on that front, but I don't want to be on it day to day. I think you can also, abuse it and overuse it. And so for me, I was trying to find a better way to organize that. I only get on social media to post. That's what I do pretty much now. And it's not a personal thing for me. Like if maybe I have a lurker page that you guys don't know about it, and maybe I'm connected to my wife on the lurker page. Like,
wow, Joseph has a Finsta. Is that what they call it?
Finsta. There you go. Yeah.
Joseph's got a what is that?
Sneaky.
What do they call that page? No, there's your burner. He's got a burner account.
Oh yeah, burner. I think it is called a Finsta, like you said.
Yeah, Finsta and a burner. He's got a burner on X, so watch out for him. That's hilarious.
That's the one you really need to find. All right,
that's the new treasure. That's the new treasure map right there, dude. You just send everybody on a goose chase.
Yeah, just type in all business Joe. You may find him. Who knows?
Hey,
someone's gonna have to start that meme account.
There we go. Yeah, I got the photos.
That's gonna be good.
We're ready. You should paste his face on Gordon Gekko, dude. Every time, all day.
Well, Joseph, I can't thank you enough for doing this with us. Was very excited to talk to you. Honestly, I think there's going to be many more times where we get to talk together. I look forward to getting on track with you again in April for the Indy test. I will be out at Thermal to see you try to become wealthier, which should be a great time. So we thank you for being a part of Speed Street and this IndyCar partnership. And I mean, you're a winner. You're leading the championship. There's no one else right now. So let's keep that going.
Hey, I appreciate you guys. It's cool you're doing it. And I would love nothing more than if we had many encounters together throughout this year. That would be great.
Believe it, baby.
I think we just might. But hey, let's not speak too early. We're one day at a time, right? One day at a time, focus, business. And yeah, Joseph still loves his wife, by the way, everyone. He still loves his wife. Everything's fine. It's all good. Well, we appreciate Joseph for being with us. That's a really cool new element to our show. All of this season, we are going to have the winner of each IndyCar race on our show only a couple days after the event, so you'll be able to hear from them. Obviously, I plan on winning the Indy 500, so I'm going to interview myself maybe after May. We'll see how that goes. I'm going to confidently go set my mindset on only winning that race. So that'll be kind of cool. I like the interesting Twitter reaction we got out of that. But yeah, Chase, great interview with Joseph. Give us a quick react to that. I love what he had to say. Love his honesty as always. And just a great guy.
Great guy, full of life, down to business. I'm really like jealous of his scene. Like I have a great scene, but like the helmets up top looked fantastic, and he just seems, like I said, he's always he's a pleasure to talk to. He really is. He's a fun loving guy. So
absolutely,
love hearing from him. Love seeing him win, man.
I hope you guys enjoyed that one. There's a lot of other things that kind of happened over the weekend. There was a lot of Michael Andretti threw out some interesting words about Roger Penske's ownership. I know there was a lot of meetings happening over the weekend, but you got to remember next week we will not have a race to talk about to preview, so we can get into more of the just the bits of news that probably deserve a bit of longer conversation about. This week we really wanted to focus on everything that happened in St. Pete. I think we can get into what the charter discussion was like over the weekend. Michael calling out Roger Penske, Chip Ganassi spoke out in support of Penske. There's a lot of different things going on. But again, this is a weekly show during our season, so look forward to next week. We might have an Indy NXT driver on next week. We might have someone else, so we'll see. But you can always look forward to a good conversation between Chase and I, and potentially producer Bobby as well if he jumps in. But as for now, let us finish off with an incredible segment. The Ricky Treadway Random Indy 500 Driver of the Week.
greatest event of its kind that's ever been run on.
Let's meet the drivers. Who will make up the field?
All right, this week we have it's funny. I just was at my parents' house for dinner last night. My mom and my stepdad Doug, and Doug Bowles had several programs from the 20s. He got some Indy 500 race programs from like 1924 to like 1931. Whoa. Very incredible to get into those. I saw several of our random Indy 500 drivers of the week in these programs. Very, very cool to have a look through those. Pretty crazy to see the old ads in those programs.
That's what I want to see is the ads.
Oh yeah, Budweiser. Like it was boom right there. Like that's what we had. Like,
it was in a
very
glass
simple
jug.
25 cents for a program. You know what I mean? Like that was big currency back then. So this year though, we went to 1989. We went to a more. I like to sometimes mix in something that a lot of our listeners might actually have been around for. And I was not around for this one. But the 1989 race, the 1989 Indy 500 was won by Emerson Fittipaldi. And now I found a name, and this is new for me because I'm a lot more familiar with the more recent names. Obviously, 1989, my father was in that race. My father finished 15th. He is not the random Indy 500 driver of the week because we know him. But the ninth place finisher in the 1989 Indy 500 was Bernard Jourdain. Now, the Jourdain name obviously sounds familiar. Bernard Jourdain, born in Brussels as a Belgian-born Mexican racing driver, Jourdain is the uncle of Michel Jourdain Jr., who Michel Jourdain, I obviously grew up watching him in the Champ Car era, even got to be on track with him at my very first Indy 500. He was actually one of the cars that did not make the race, my very first Indy 500 driving for Ray Hall. Fascinating. Bernard runs a restaurant in California as well as other business projects. I had no idea. Bernard Jourdain, uncle of Michel Jourdain Jr., he's got a ton of racing history that honestly I am kind of not ashamed to not know about. But pretty wild. He had 3 Indy 500s that he tried to do, it looks like. Made 2 of them, got injured in 1990. But yeah, top 10 in his very first Indy 500 in 1989. Also raced in the Indy 500 in 1991. But wow, Bernard Jourdain. That's
what kind of restaurant does he run?
I don't know. That's an interesting one. I would love to. It doesn't say much about his restaurateuringness.
He's got a good name for he's got a good chef name. I will say that.
Yeah.
Like Jourdain, like it sounds like he could whip up like some really good Brussels sprouts.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
he's from there.
Fascinating.
I found a photo of him.
Yeah, you did.
I did find a photo of him. I'm looking at it right now. Like if you Google him, there's a trading card that I'm looking at, and he's got a hat on in this trading card. It's an old Buick blue cap, and I really want it. I really want that hat. If anyone can find him, speak to him. If he has that hat, please tell him to call me.
Yeah, he is. He's 73 currently. Very, very cool. But so this is kind of wild. He had a very bad crash. Obviously, we saw he tried to qualify for the 1990 race. His car ricocheted off 3 walls, demolished the car, seriously injured himself, underwent surgery to remove his spleen. That's wild. So racing, obviously, much more dangerous back then, but eventually came back to the Indy 500 in 1991. So again, very cool to learn about. I did not know about this, and maybe people will get mad at me for not knowing this, but I did not know that Michel Jourdain Jr.'s uncle, Bernard, raced at the Indianapolis 500. So we learn something new this is what this segment is all about. I love it. Very, very excited.
Enjoyed.
So anyway, Chase, appreciate you learning about this with me. As always, folks, we appreciate you. We're going to have another great show next week. Please subscribe to our show. Leave us a rating, however many stars you feel is appropriate. Leave us a comment as well on there. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Appreciate those folks. You've got us now to the monetization level. I'm now a YouTube partner. So boom, baby, we got that locked in. Feel very good about that. That's good. That means more and more for the YouTube stuff. You can see the full video episode, so you see Joseph's beautiful face. But as always, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that stuff, anywhere you can consume a podcast in a responsible manner or a non-responsible manner, we appreciate you. So yeah, again, tune in next week. Please share this show with a friend, an enemy, or a family member, whoever you feel like you'd like to share this show with. And until next week, have a great weekend. Enjoy yourselves. And we'll see you next week on Speed Street. Hey everyone, Connor Daly here. Please leave a like on this video if you did enjoy it, and also subscribe to the channel as well. That would be very helpful. Be a friend, tell a friend. Thank you so much for the support, and we'll see you on the next episode of Speed Street.